The transport pod shuddered as it descended through the crimson atmosphere of Kepler 442b. Lisa pressed her face against the reinforced glass, watching the alien landscape materialize below, jagged crystalline formations that jutted from the ground like broken teeth, and forests of bioluminescent vegetation that pulsed with an eerie blue light. "First contact protocol," Alex muttered beside her, reviewing the data pad for the 100th time. His knuckles were white around the device. "Peaceful observation, no interference, document and retreat." Lisa turned to look at her partner. They'd been paired together for this mission 3 months ago, two xenoanthropologists fresh out of the academy, eager to make their mark. Alex was methodical, cautious, everything Lisa wasn't. She lived for the thrill of discovery, the rush of standing on alien soil and witnessing intelligence that had evolved light years from Earth. "We'll be fine," she said, though her voice lacked conviction. "The probes detected tool use social structures. They're pre-industrial. We observe, we learn, we leave." The pod touched down in a clearing surrounded by those strange, glowing trees. Through the observation screens, they could see movement in the shadows, shapes that walked on 4 legs, then 2, bodies covered in thick fur that shimmered like oil in water. "The cubs," Alex whispered, zooming in the external cameras. "Look." 3 small creatures tumbled through the underbrush, playing what looked like a game of chase. They were about the size of human children, with large eyes that reflected the bioluminescent light. Their faces were almost feline, but their paws showed the early development of opposable digits. They chirped and clicked at each other, a language the translation algorithms were already attempting to parse. Then the adults emerged. They were magnificent and terrifying in equal measure, twice the size of the cubs, moving with a predator's grace. Their fur rippled with colors that seemed to communicate emotion, deep purples, flashing oranges, calming blues. The largest one, clearly the pack leader, had scars across its chest and an intelligence in its eyes that made Lisa's breath catch. "We need more data," Lisa said, reaching for her field kit. "I'm going to set up the remote sensors." "Lisa, no, protocol says." Protocol was written by people who have never been in the field. "We have a chance to observe a complex social species in their natural habitat. I'm not wasting it." She was already moving toward the airlock before Alex could stop her. The atmospheric readings were safe, oxygen-rich, slightly higher pressure than Earth, but within human tolerances. She pulled on her sensor gloves, grabbed the collection of micro-drones, and stepped out onto alien soil for the first time. The air smelled like ozone and something sweet she couldn't identify. The ground was soft beneath her boots, covered in a moss-like substance that released tiny spores with each step. She moved quietly toward the tree line, placing drones in strategic positions, her heart hammering with excitement. That's when she heard the scream. It came from deeper in the forest, a sound of pure agony that transcended species. Lisa froze, her training warring with her instincts. Non-interference was the prime directive, but that sound. Another scream, followed by a chorus of clicks and chirps that the translation software rendered as laughter. Lisa ran. She found them in a clearing lit by the bioluminescent flora. The pack of adult creatures had formed a circle around someone on the ground. As Lisa crept closer, hiding behind the massive trunk of a crystal tree, she saw what held their attention. It was one of them. An adult but smaller than the others, its fur matted and dulled to a sickly gray. It was bound to a stake driven into the ground, its body covered in wounds. And standing over it, the scarred leader held something that looked like a whip made from thorned vines. The cubs watched from the edge of the circle. Their eyes were wide, their colors muted to pale yellows and grays. Fear, Lisa realized. They were afraid. The leader raised the whip and brought it down. The bound creature screamed again, its body convulsing. The other adults clicked and chirped, approval, encouragement. This was a public punishment, Lisa realized with horror, a lesson being taught. She should leave. She should run back to the pod, file her report, let the ethics committee decide what to do. But her feet wouldn't move. She watched, transfixed and sickened, as the punishment continued. Then the smallest cub did something unexpected. It stepped forward, breaking from the safety of the observation circle. The colors on its fur flickered rapidly: questions, confusion, distress. It approached the scarred leader and made a series of soft chirps. The leader stopped, whip raised mid-strike. It looked down at the cub, and for a moment, something like kindness flashed across its features. Then it pointed at the bound creature, pointed at the cub, and made a long, complex series of clicks and whistles. Lisa's translation software struggled, then produced a rough approximation. Count your family, they all follow next. The cub's colors went white, pure terror. It looked at the bound creature, then back at its family members in the circle, counting, understanding. This wasn't just punishment. It was a warning. Step out of line and everyone you love pays the price. The cub retreated, trembling. Lisa felt hands on her shoulders and nearly screamed. Alex had followed her, his face pale in the alien light. "We have to go," he whispered urgently. "Now." But Lisa couldn't look away. The leader had resumed the punishment, each strike more vicious than the last. The bound creature's screams had faded to weak whimpers. The cubs watched, learning the lesson being burned into their consciousness: conform or condemn those you love. "This is their culture," Alex hissed. "We can't interfere. First contact protocol." "Fuck the protocol," Lisa snapped. But even as she said it, she knew Alex was right. They were observers. To interfere would be to impose human values on an alien species, to potentially disrupt the natural evolution of their society. It was the cardinal sin of xenoanthropology. But watching that smallest cub, its colors still white with fear, watching it learn that love could be weaponized, that family could be a tool of control, it made something inside Lisa break. "We document this," she said finally, her voice hard. "Every second. We take it back to Earth and we let them see what intelligence looks like. Not all of it is beautiful. Not all of it deserves our respect." They retreated to the pod, Lisa's hands shaking as she downloaded the drone footage. The punishment continued for another hour. When it finally ended, the bound creature was barely alive. The pack left it tied to the stake as they departed, the cubs trailing behind, their colors subdued. As the pod lifted off, breaking through the atmosphere toward the orbit of their main ship, Lisa watched the planet shrink below them. That smallest cub was down there somewhere, carrying the weight of an impossible choice: rebel and destroy your family, or submit and lose yourself. "What do we tell them?" Alex asked quietly. "Command the committee, Earth." Lisa thought about the propaganda they'd been fed at the academy. The noble pursuit of understanding alien life, the beauty of cosmic diversity, the hope that somewhere in the universe, humanity would find kindness reflected back at us. "We tell them the truth," she said. "That intelligence doesn't guarantee morality, that the capacity for cruelty might be universal, that we found a species that weaponizes love and teaches its children through terror. They'll want to go back, study them more." "I know. What if this is just one group? What if there are others of this species who—" "Maybe," Lisa cut him off. "Or maybe this is who they are. Maybe this is how they survived long enough to develop tools and language and complex social structures. Maybe cruelty is an evolutionary advantage." The silence that followed was heavy with implications neither wanted to voice. If cruelty was advantageous, if it appeared independently across the cosmos, what did that say about humanity, about the violence in their own history? Lisa closed her eyes, but all she could see was that smallest cub, counting its family members, understanding that each of them was a hostage to its behavior. She thought about Earth, about the countless ways humans had weaponized love throughout history, the ways they still did. "Count your family," she whispered. "They'll all follow next." It wasn't an alien concept at all. It was horrifyingly, devastatingly familiar. The pod docked with the main ship and Lisa prepared her report. She included everything: the footage, the translations, her own shaking commentary. She marked it Priority 1 and sent it to Earth, knowing it would take years to arrive, knowing that by then that small cub would be grown, either having learned its lesson or having paid the price for defiance. Alex found her later in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. "First contact," he said softly, "not what we expected." "No," Lisa agreed, "but maybe it's what we needed to see." "What do you mean?" She turned to face him, her reflection ghostly in the glass. "We go to the stars looking for something better than ourselves, but maybe the universe doesn't owe us that. Maybe the lesson is that intelligence isn't enough. Choice matters. The choices we make about how to use our power, how to treat the vulnerable, how to teach our young." "You think they have a choice, that species?" Lisa thought about the smallest cub. "I think someone always has a choice, even if the cost is unbearable." The ship began its long journey to the next system, the next possibility of contact. But Lisa knew she would carry this first encounter with her forever, a reminder that the universe was vast and strange and full of wonders. Some of them were beautiful, and some of them whipped the helpless in front of their children and called it order.